Paula's already inside. Surely I believe others will be joining us later. Let's try to remain muted all through, not unless you want to ask a question so that we don't distract our speaker of the day. In case you have anything that you'd like to air or to share, just raise your hand and then you'll be given the opportunity. As much as possible, let's make this sharing interactive. If you have an idea, if it's something you want to suggest, an opinion, whatever you have, let's make use of the chat box. From time to time, we'll be going back to the chat box and we'll be sharing what you get there. So we can make use of that because I believe most of us will be having a lot to share. I want to introduce our speakers of the day because we have the Kenya Sign Language interpreter and also Dr. Wangari, who is the main speaker of the day. Hope I'm being heard. I hope you can hear me from that end. And even before I do that,
I can hear you.
Okay, good. And even before I do that, I would invite each one of us just briefly. Let's see your face. Just let's show through the video your face so that we can know who are these. And then after we can put it off. Just a minute. Oh wow, Vivian, I can see you there. Great, great, great. Yeah. Let's see your faces. Yeah, Millicent. Yeah. I can see. Yeah, I know there are some who are listening to us from Italy. I can see some of my friends and my sisters from Italy listening to us. So you are all welcome. Anytime that you need to ask something, just raise your hand and we'll be there for you. So allow me to take this opportunity to introduce the speakers of the day. With us, we have Julia Wachila. She is Kenya Sign Language interpreter. I believe you can see her. And who is Julia? Julia Wachila is a trained and practicing Kenya Sign Language interpreter for many years. She is also a trained teacher, a teacher of English and literature, and has also done inclusive education. For most of her career life, she has been actively involved in sign language interpretation on various local and international platforms. She has also worked in the public sector as a ward administrator in the county government of Laikipia. Currently, Julia is pursuing a higher national diploma in human resource management and is also venturing into mediation as an alternative dispute resolution. She has worked with the deaf people and people living with various disabilities for many, many years. Her greatest joy is to bridge the communication gap between the deaf and the hearing. Together, help me to welcome Julia Wachila, our KSL interpreter, to our webinar tonight. Let's welcome her. Just the gesture of a clap, of approval, of, yeah, let's see. You just need to go to that, yeah, even from the chat box, from the reactions. Let's welcome Julia Wachila to be among us during this webinar. I want to see that. Great, yeah. So Julia Wachila, you're welcome to be with us. Our main speaker of the day is Dr. Joyce Wangari Ngugi. Who is Dr. Joyce Wangari Ngugi? Dr. Wangari Ngugi, is a consultant psychologist and a research mentor. She is the director of Bwira Communications Foundation, which runs several flagship programs, including Deaf Mental Health Training Program. She is also the founder of Mental Health Psychosocial Support Opportunities, which is the largest online platform in the region, availing jobs, internships, career mentorships, training, and work-learn placement on mental health. If you want to get, you are already a profession and you want to learn somewhere, you don't know where you are, you want to get there where you want, this is the place to be. Just need to contact Dr. Joyce. At the end of it all, she'll give us her contact for those who like to reach her. She won a global award at the APA, and she is a TED Talk laureate. And something else about Dr. Joyce, what I know about her is that she's passionate about working with the deaf community. That one I know from experience, and I know she thrives in this area. She loves it. Together, help me welcome Dr. Wangari to our meeting and as the main speaker of the day. Kaide, let's welcome Dr. Wangari to our webinar today as the main speaker. Dr. Wangari, you're most welcome. And even before I give you the chance, let me just say some little about myself. I'm the moderator of the webinar this evening. I am Sister Pauline Waitito, a psychologist, a lecturer in the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, a professional addiction counselor, and a character coach trainer. I am a pioneer member of the Positive Psychology Association of Kenya, and currently I'm a student in Catholic University. So without much ado, let me take it over to Dr. Wangari, and she will take us through. She'll have the first session speaking to us, and then after we shall have a session, a QA session, whereby we shall interact more and ask questions and make clarification in case we need. So for now, I hand it over to Dr. Wangari. Karibu, Daktari.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And also thank you, Julia, our sign language interpreter. I'm so honored to be amongst colleagues and friends. It's a chilly evening in Nairobi because we are blessed with the rains. And seeing colleagues from far and wide, I am so grateful for Positive Psychology Association of Kenya for this opportunity. We really enjoy the monthly webinars, and I am a member of the Positive Psychology Association of Kenya. I am member number 33. So I'd now like to take us through a slide presentation, and feel free at any time, just like our moderator, Sister Pauline, has said, to type in the chat or to ask any questions as we go along. We will have an extended time to talk after the presentation, but meanwhile, we will be happy to collect your views, your feedback, and your questions. So my website is wangari.africa, and my organization is called Gwira Communications Foundation. Gwira is an Rwandese word which means kindness. So we are all about kindness, and that is related to Positive Psychology Association of Kenya, actually. And today I will be talking about positive psychology interventions with the deaf and hard of hearing community in Kenya. We do have a very vibrant deaf community in Kenya, and I'm curious to know if any of our members today are deaf and hard of hearing, and whether you are able to see the sign language interpreter. So as Sister Pauline said, please introduce yourselves in the chat. It would be nice to also know whether you are deaf or hearing. It's because today that's what we are talking about. So this is probably the poster you saw, and very well done, of course, from the office at the park. So, of course, as we continue this presentation, we may have differing opinions. Some people have asked me, why do we use the word deaf? Is that a positive word? We do have etiquette terminology, and deaf is a positive word. The thing I will ask all of us is just to know that we may have different opinions, and we can just respect them, so we can have an open posture to learn and relearn. And also that we will be able to take ownership of the chat. Please type in the chat if you have any comment as we go along, even if it's a reaction, you know where the reaction bar is, questions. And then we might be radical, and not all of us think the same about every issue. And sometimes people feel emotionally about something. And so that is okay. We do want to hear from you, all of your different angles of your understanding, because I have a program I run, and we are always getting feedback in order to improve the content, the design, the delivery. Let us know what is working, what is not working, and what else is missing. We'll really appreciate that. So at the end of today, we will have 3 outcomes. The first one is you will be able to, of course, define and explain what positive psychology is, deafness, deaf culture, and the deaf community. Then you will be able to identify the various types of mental health approaches for deaf children and adults, especially in the field of positive psychology. And we will also be able to discuss the impact of deafness on relationships and social life. We do have some concepts in positive psychology of the deaf, and we will be going into that. And then we will be able to recognize any assistive technology and communication tools, as well as different people who assist the deaf community. We'll be able to see the types of deafness, levels, and the labels that are given for different severities of hearing loss. And of course, we will be able to describe what Kenyan Sign Language is and outline its importance for hearing and deaf individuals. And of course, the challenges, issues, and misconceptions in access. And of course, when we talk about access, access is a very, very popular topic in the deaf community because of the access challenges. So let's proceed. I became very, very interested, both professionally and personally, in a world not based on sound because of the experiences of my older sister, whom I follow. And when growing up, she used to tell me, oh, I can't hear very well. And you are able to hear, can you speak louder? At some point, she had a hole in her eardrum. And so the doctor advised that she had to go for some surgery. So growing up, we were in and out of the ENT, and she was admitted for long periods. And as a family, we had a shift in our life perspectives. I also became very intrigued about sign language, and then deaf culture and mental health. And I have now in adulthood, from that early experience, met many, many more people in my extended family, as well as friends and colleagues who are in the space of deaf mental health. And we'll be talking more about how it's happening in Kenya. So this is a really, really packed slide, but I'll highlight a little of the work I've done in this field. Some highlights are that I enjoy a lot working with people with disabilities and other special needs and their caregivers. Over 18 years now of work, and I've worked in different settings. I have been one of the policy members at USIU Africa, where I went to school, and I also started the Sign Language Club there. At the time, it was the only club for students on disability matters. But out of that, we managed to launch the very first ever policy that allowed for full access of different kinds of disabilities. And now there's a full disability office because of that work. We also founded the University Disability Inclusion Network, which actually the headquarters is at Tangaza College, and Brenda Kiema is our convener. And I've also worked as a board member at Kasarani Treeside Secondary School for the Deaf. And I was hired by the Ministry of Education, bringing in a lot of the transitions that deaf students needed before and after COVID, actually, around that time. I also have been a facilitator with the Mirema School. The Mirema School have a special unit, and they take children from kindergarten to primary. And they also have a very active parents group. So I was the chief advisor connecting the teachers and the parents for a period of 3 years, up to when COVID happened. And then when we went online, the group disbanded. But it was a very amazing program. So currently, I run the largest platform with over 200,000 members of mental health jobs in Kenya. It is called MHPSS Opportunities. So on a daily basis, I do post jobs on a platform called MHPSS Premium. Another highlight of my career, I would be privileged to say, is that at the American Psychological Association in the year 2018, I had written a paper on the barriers to mental health access for deaf adults in Kenya. This is accessible in my website, wangari.africa. Feel free to read the entire paper, which is published under the Journal of Clinical Psychology at Daystar University, as well as the poster, which I'm going to show you shortly. So these are some of my publications, the one that won an award, as well as my doctoral main research, which was on depression and social systems and access to mental health for deaf adults in Kenya. I've also done quite considerable work in the juvenile justice system, trying to place deaf children. And I have written a lot on deafness in academia because I've worked a lot in academic settings, as I explained earlier from my stint at USIU. And we do have a lot of webinars that we run alongside the main program, which I'll be talking about shortly. So this is the poster presentation that won a global award. I was a co-author with Anne Mwiti, then was a student at Daystar. Now she's Dr. Anne Mwiti. And we managed to combine our efforts and fundraised self-sponsored trip to the US, and in California were awarded. And this award has opened up a lot of conversations in the space of deaf mental health. I urge all of you to take time to read it. It's a simple, nice poster that you can find on my website. So I'd now like to hear from you. Did you manage to introduce your name? Tell us if you have any nicknames. What do you do for a living? What do you do for fun? Have you worked in the field of deaf mental health? And what knowledge would you like to acquire today? Which skills would you like to get? And what attitudes would you like to transform? You know, we say, and Prof. Selva, my mentor, always says, a good training helps you to get knowledge, skills, attitudes, but also reflection. You reflect about your community of practice and see whether you can join. So please type in the chat and we'll be able to see all your responses. We'd like to know more about what you do and if you've ever met deaf people or worked with them. If we had time, we would have done more on the ice breaking. Usually, the knowledge and skills that you use in the field of mental health starts from your personal observations and experiences, like I explained. My interest in deaf mental health started in my nuclear family with my older sister, whom actually we are the closest in age. So we grew up like twins. People used to call us twins. And so how did you develop an interest in deaf mental health? Have you ever had any handicapping experience currently or in the past? And how about, have you ever been in a conversation with somebody who is deaf, and how was that? And if you're here and you're deaf, tell us, how is it like? Is it easy to speak to hearing people? And today we'll be comparing the different cultures, including one culture called deaf culture. Then on attitudes, we would like to know, how do you interact? Are you able to take feedback? And how do you promote an equal relationship? When we talk about equality and inclusion, that's a very, very, very popular topic in the deaf community because there's inequality that's driving discrimination and a lot of stigma. So we'd like to know what your experience has been. How did you manage to do that? And also, do you know about any of the collective deaf norms, culture, and trauma-informed practice? And what's your feeling about attending deaf events? Have you ever gone to any socialization events? There's a lot of the deaf community, particularly in Nairobi, have a lot of wonderful things. There's art, there's culture, there's sports. This is the deaf community. There's a lot of churches. I don't know if any of you are members, or masjids, if you are a Muslim or any other religion. If you've been to the mosque and seen, there's always a deaf community. What was your experience with the time orientation and the idea of getting late? Because we'll talk about what deaf grapevine means, and we shall see how it is very easy to be so engrossed in conversations when you meet deaf people that you forget all about the time. And then when you met deaf people, how did you start the conversation? And have you ever identified any collaboration and partnership opportunities? And whose priority was it? Was it the deaf person? Was it the hearing person? So those are some of the questions about your experiences that I'm very, very curious to know. And because of time, we will not be able to open up for everyone. Just mute everyone so that I'm able to, yeah, please kindly mute if you're the one who is unmuted. Thank you. So, what is positive psychology? Positive psychology is a science and field of
Ya
study
nini?
that can promote flourishing outcomes. When we talk about flourishing, we're talking about outcomes like empathy, mindfulness, subjective well-being, social connection. And when I do mindfulness sessions with deaf people, sometimes, when you're with hearing people, you might be told, close your eyes so that you can meditate. But, with deaf people, they are seeing people. So we will need to have more mindfulness sessions that are adapted to deaf people, and they still need all of these things, and they still really enjoy a lot of these outcomes from positive psychology work that we do. And positive psychology also mitigates against languishing. Languishing is about suffering. That's the opposite of flourishing. So in positive psychology, we use the words flourishing and languishing a lot. And some of those are like anxiety, depression, social isolation, and a lot of the psychopathology that are increasingly common today. In my experience, I have seen, and research confirms, that there are twice the number of deaf people who have the languishing outcomes, the mental health illnesses done compared to the hearing people. So there is more need for mental health interventions in the deaf community. So of course, we have many more research studies, more recently in Kenya. And I think technology has been a really amazing gift and blessing in Kenya, because now we have noticed that also the deaf are early adopters of technology. So at least we are able to engage with more and more studies to study these things. So positive psychology and the deaf, you can see the word deaf spelled in sign language, that's the DEAF. And here we're talking about, although deaf and hard of hearing people face a lot of challenges and stressors, has been the focus of many studies, but very little is known about their positive experiences. For instance, knowing the child, when there is a child that's born in a deaf family, 98% of families with a deaf child have other members who are all hearing. So the whole idea of just exploring the world of the child who is deaf is something that we need more studies on. Appreciating everyday positives, increasing involvement with the child. These are all positive psychology concepts. Relishing the highs, taking less for granted, letting go, learning, advocating, experiencing personal growth. So when we talk about positive psychology and the deaf, these are some concepts from a study that was done. We also have a few other concepts. Deafhood, also called the deaf world. The deaf world is a concept that was coined in North America to describe, the entire culture of living in this bubble where you speak a language that's a minority language. We know that in every population, only about 5% are people with disabilities. So the deaf will always be fewer than, the hearing people. But when we talk about deafhood, now we're talking about this concept of deafness that is a journey, a lifetime journey. It includes things on deaf identity, deaf culture, the entire deafhood that a deaf person undertakes to discover his or her true identity and purpose in life. There's a very distinct deaf culture that emerges, especially because of deaf schools, as well as in adulthood, so that deaf adults might have a very different experience from deaf children. So deaf gain is another very important concept in the field of positive psychology. And the deaf, we're talking about the contributions of deaf people, their languages, how the society as a whole has benefited from the existence of deaf people. I don't know if you know any famous people who are deaf. Beethoven was one of them. He invented music even after he became deaf. And one example of deaf gain is that of closed captioning. The reason that deaf people will be able to follow this recording for a long time after today is because we have Julia interpreting sign language, and that's the closed captioning. So in Kenya, recently, we've had a law, the Communications Act, that enabled all of the TV stations and all the news broadcasts to be disseminated live in sign language. So that has been a benefit, of deaf people. They have introduced an entire industry, and that has raised the visibility and the rhetoric of the deaf community in Kenya. As we know, Kenyan Sign Language is the third national language. We have two official languages in Kenya, English and Kiswahili, and therefore Kenyan Sign Language, which is at the heart of the deaf community, has now become more widespread. Of course, we need many more people to learn the language and interact with deaf people. We have many more famous people with deafness. We know the very famous Helen Keller, who was deaf and blind. I've just mentioned Beethoven. There's many more. I'll mention one more, Thomas Edison. Did anybody know that Thomas Edison was deaf at some point or experienced deafness? The famous physician, Thomas Edison, and many, many more. There's one more concept here I want to describe, the deaf grapevine. This is a very well-known concept. And the deaf grapevine is a concept which means the network of deaf people who are very, very closely connected. They pass a lot of incidental information as well as important information, including even rumors from one to the other through friends and family. If you walk through the streets of Nairobi, you will quickly notice at the corners where the sweets are sold, a lot of traders who are deaf, and they stand and they speak for hours, and they'll be signing in, and they'll be passing important information to each other, inviting each other maybe to the church service or to a sports event, or decrying, the inequality and the oppression in society when they're trying to look for jobs and things like that. And because they really enjoy the company of each other, I'm sure you've seen them at Ambassador. I'm sure you've seen them in different other places around town. And this is what we call the deaf grapevine. So let me talk a little bit about the genesis and the milestones of the deaf mental health training that we have launched in Kenya. It is the inaugural official training program in Kenya centering the deaf people. We have a team of both deaf and hearing trainers, all of them fluent in Kenyan Sign Language and very, very adept in the culture. They know the culture very well. This training is fulfilling the need for competency and certification standards. We met a lot of sign language interpreters who are interested in mental health. We also, our largest group of participants is actually family members, that is, parents, siblings of people who have any level of deafness. So we've been very fortunate to get lots of families joining in and being able to understand for the first time a lot of the concepts in mental health. The other group that we've targeted, aside from interpreters and family members, are mental health professionals, some of whom have some level of signing skills, but we don't require that anybody must have, sign language skills, because we always work with interpreters, and that is part of just bridging the gap and creating more, visual kinds of programs that are more deaf friendly. So we really do not have accurate statistics, even per county, about the deaf. We also don't even know their psychographic or psychological conditions. We don't know how many deaf people in Kenya currently have depression. So we have a lot of work in order to map and create the systems to improve mental health. So our program is now just completing the first cohort that started in September. So what is deafness? Deafness is the condition of hearing loss, which could be mild, moderate, moderately severe, or profound. And some people use the word hearing impaired, but that is not a word that is very encouraged by the deaf community because it comes from the medical model. And then I'd now like you to list in the chat any assistive technology, communication tools, and kinds of personnel that are used by the deaf and hard of hearing populations. Let me see if you know any of them. I'll give you a minute to just type in the chat. Then I'll see if we have people paying attention. So George is asking whether there is a sign language interpreter. George, somebody please type in the chat that he can pin Julia's name is sign language interpreter. I hope somebody has been able to answer. Oh, yes, thank you, our moderator, for responding to George. Thank you. So, do you know any assistive technology, communication tools? Thank you so much. Moses Kokach says hearing aid, Braille. I'm not sure how Braille is used with the deaf. Maybe you can explain. Okay, you say, sorry, Braille is for the blind. Thank you. Millicent Akinyi says hearing aid. Okay, please don't repeat what somebody else has said. You can give us a different one. Feel free to ask Dr. Google if you don't know. Just check assistive technology and communication tools that are used. Cochlear implants. Thank you. Let's see if we have any more. Anyone else? I'm waiting to see if we have any other answer or... Okay, only those two. We have hearing aids, cochlear implants, anything else? Check on Dr. Google and then tell us. I'll give you sign language apps. Okay, great. So I'll move on. We can add hearing dogs. We can add flashing doorbells. There's so many more. We can add adapted PDF, documents with more visual aids. Anything that's more visual, has more images, icons, is deaf friendly assistive technology. So all of these things you've mentioned, we call them assistive technology. How come nobody mentioned any personnel that work with deaf and hard of hearing people? Do you know? Yes, thank you, Helen Waora, sign language interpreters. We also have deaf readers, deaf interpreters. For instance, in the courts of law, when we have deaf people presenting as witnesses or accused or complainants, we can have a fellow deaf person who knows the home signs localized to that deaf person, who then interprets to the hearing person, who then then uses standardized sign language. So we can have two interpreters when a deaf person is signing in court, a deaf interpreter, as well as a sign language interpreter who is hearing. I hope that is clear. Thank you, easy listener. Thank you. Masi Chesang, please check your audio or log out and come back in. Jane Baya, I know I asked assistive technology, but I added also personnel. So feel free to mention any other. I've not finished all the personnel. We also have lip readers. We have people who can help read lips and also communicate in a more, exaggerated way with their mouth. I have been a lip reader for a deaf person who preferred sign language with lip reading. So I was mouthing the words more. Thank you, Jen Bayer. Text to speech and speech to text. Okay, well said. Thank you very much. That is very well said, everybody. So I'm going to proceed. We talk about the medical D of small deaf, where it is, as I said earlier, a wrong to be made right, a broken ear with a person attached model. That's the deficit model. It's also the charity model that we want to avoid. But when we use a capital D to talk about the deaf, we're talking about the culture, the birthright, the heritage, a shared language and traditions, a way of being in the world. And it is just a difference. It's not a disability, actually. So to the deaf people themselves, they're culturally deaf and they do not have any disability. It is the society, actually, that creates barriers. Imagine if our society was very adapted to deaf people, then deafness would just be a difference, should not be a disability. What is Kenyan Sign Language? It is a complete and complex visual language using signs, facial expressions, and posture. It has rules for pronunciation, word order, and complex grammar. Some people think that sign language is just a gestural, small way of communicating sometimes when you can't talk, and that's not true. It is a complete language. Let me emphasize that again. It is the first language of many individuals in Kenya who are deaf and hard of hearing, and it's important to note that sign languages are not universal. Most of national sign languages are different, and we have international sign, but controversies exist in how international it is. It's mostly based on American Sign Language. So as I said earlier, Kenyan Sign Language is the third national language after the two official languages in Kenya, which is English and Swahili. If any of you would like to learn sign language, please sign up with the Kenya National Association of the Deaf. They are having the next cohort of sign language classes in May. I know a lot of people will be asking me that. So what is deaf culture? As I said earlier, it's the beliefs, identities, shared language, values, poetry and art, behaviors. And it also connotes this group, which is a minority with a common history of oppression and mistrust towards the hearing. Generally speaking, that's the collective culture. It's a different way of being in the world and perceiving reality. And there are formidable access barriers that deaf people share. In Kenya, around 2 million people are deaf and hard of hearing. However, official government statistics give a much less figure. Therefore, there has been controversies in just getting the numbers because of the stigma, even in collecting this data during census. So about a third of Kenyans have personally experienced a mental health illness or problem. So 1 in 3, or we can even say 1 in 4. So how many deaf people then do you think? We had already said earlier that about twice the number of hearing people are deaf people with mental health conditions. So you can imagine, therefore, that there's a very big need to get research on the extent of mental health conditions, how much they are flourishing or languishing in all our 47 counties. And we look at different age groups, the gender, and other variables, even including socioeconomic status. So in our field of well-being, we always allude to the biopsychosocial model. The yellow part is the biological factors like genetics, age, immune response, nutrition, and disability status. Psychological factors are like the attitude, coping skills, emotions, behavior, and personality, while social factors are about social support, culture, wealth, religion, education, and work. And you can see the interplay between biological and social factors, such as when people are taking drugs. A lot of deaf adults who are men will be caught up in, drugs just to cope with mental health issues. And then we have a large number of women, for instance, who are also caught up in a lot of the trauma, the combination of psychological and social factors. And we also know even sexual abuse is actually higher in groups of people with disability than those without disability. And then, of course, when biological and psychological factors combine, we can even talk about the temperament. So all of these things are what we call mental health or well-being. So we do have positive stress and negative stress. As you can see in the diagram, positive stress is called eustress. For instance, when you have an exam and you have to remember all the answers, you can cope. It's a bit strenuous, but you can cope. But distress is very negative. It is like the picture with the thunderstorm, and it is excessive stress. And we have known that a lot of our deaf community members in Kenya have suffered. A few have died by suicide. And these are the things we need to prevent going forward as we continue with our deaf mental health work. So the differences arise out of, as I said earlier, genetics, biology, and I had also mentioned that most deaf children are born in families with hearing people. However, we also know that the causes of deafness are also genetic. But we also have some other environmental causes, such as some diseases can cause deafness and things like that. But we need to emphasize that it is not deafness itself that brings mental health issues. It is the societal oppression that is the biggest. The inequities, inequalities, unfairness, and things like that. So deaf people struggle a lot with family, life events, the culture around them, which doesn't understand how they live. And also, there's a lot of impoverishment because of lack of access to adequate education and economic opportunities. So with language delays, you'll find probably older learners in class with younger learners, most typically because of the delays in even accessing education. As you can see in this picture, this is a picture by the very famous Fellinger, one of the pioneers in the field of deaf mental health. And it's very clear that Hearing people have a wide open door, and there are many more people accessing. Deaf people have a bigger burden. You can see at the right side of the slide, and they are entering a smaller door, so the access is much more limited. So mental health systems are currently largely inaccessible. We have a lot more trained nurses and doctors in sign language. However, they are not adequate. You may find that the nurse who is fluent in sign language goes on leave, and this patient is told to wait when they are very, very sick and they are not able to access, including our major national hospitals. So we do have a lot of problems in access of health in general and mental health. Like I said earlier, the mental health concerns of hearing people are just the same as deaf people. We have a lot of deaf people with depression, anxiety, ADHD, and most of this is undiagnosed and untreated. Autism spectrum disorder, as a matter of fact, we do have a lot of the comorbidity there. Eating disorder, the comorbidity is very, very high because what we know, the factors of poverty, which make people probably eat only a starch diet, and therefore they can be at risk of becoming obese. Then we have lots of trauma disorders like PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenia, learning disorders, and psychotic disorders. And all these are largely unmapped. My doctoral research was on depression and psychosocial support access. So of course, as I say, the rates are higher in deaf people than hearing people, and the pieces of the puzzle are different. When you can't even diagnose, we can't even know the numbers, how then can we treat them? So the reality of being deaf in a hearing world is about, exposure to accessible language is an issue. Attachment relationships with hearing parents are an issue. That is why when a lot of people who are deaf become adults, they end up, congregating with fellow deaf people, and they sort of gravitate away from most of their hearing, family members. And that just talks a lot about the attachment relationships. And then differences in how learning happens. A lot of the learning in deaf training is specific to general, but in hearing, we use the formats of general to specific, which may not always work, in the deaf community. So understanding and forming relationships is always a problem. Adequate employment opportunities. Then we have these permeating and pervasive, significant and ongoing barriers, and a sort of an invisibility. Although there's a lot of affirmative action and there's talk shop, the experience of deaf people is actually that, there's not much of equality. So we have a lot of challenges accessing healthcare because of inadequate knowledge, especially in mental health, and differences in worldviews. And for instance, because a lot of people in the deaf community may not know a lot of the jargon words, like the difference between trauma and depression and anxiety, they may just think that someone who is depressed or someone who is sleeping in the house the whole day and night is just idiosyncratic, just the way they are. In other words, it's just the way they are. So there's very, very low access to information, communication, and language. And that leads to this unique languishing mental health issues, like I had said earlier. So what can we do? First, we have to start by understanding some best practice facts. Being deaf in itself does not cause mental health problems. It is a risk factor associated with more mental health disorders, and there appears to be more disorders in the deaf population than the hearing population. So we need to train more practitioners with specialized training and experience. We need treatment that is culturally and linguistically accessible. We were very, very, very grateful for Julia for volunteering her time today to have our deaf and hard of hearing participants able to fully participate today. So we need education to deaf individuals, families, and communities regarding mental health. And the hearing mental health system must be made accessible 24/7. We need interpreters with mental health training because we do have very jargon words, very specialized words in the field of positive psychology. And so skilled interpreters are necessary and critical in the team of mental health care work. So as I finish, we do have a very, very burgeoning program at Guira Communications Foundation. We are almost completing the first cohort. We ran a series of 12 sessions, and we are spearheading lots of research, training, workshops, both online and on-site, that is in person, face-to-face. We do conferences. We've hosted quite a number and a lot of information sharing. And we are still looking for more partners in order to be able to reach more people. Now, during the holidays, we've been doing programs with children, girls, boys, as well as adults, parents, and so on and so forth, who need support with mental health. We've also been connecting drug rehabs who need to increase their deaf-friendly accommodations, because we know those who are struggling with alcohol and drug abuse will need a deaf-friendly rehab program. So as I finish, this is a quote by a lady who is both deaf and blind, a very famous lady in history. Her name is Helen Keller. She said that blindness cuts off one from things, but deafness cuts one off from people. So that's a really profound quote that gets us to just appreciate the challenges of people who are deaf. So I'd like to invite you all to our program. This is the poster for the program, and I'll be sharing it so that if any of you are interested in receiving training, debriefing, coaching, case consultation, clinical supervision, and as I said, we have it in both sign language and in spoken language, and you don't have to know sign language to join, because you can also be highly encouraged to start the training, the separate training at Kenya National Association of the Deaf, in order for you to master sign language. And also, we will be working with interpreters. The idea is to exponentially increase the people who are able to do this work and to start to create competency standards. So I'd really, really like to appreciate all of you for your kind attention. And I think at this point, I will be happy to take any questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Wangari. It's awesome, awesome. It's great. We've learned a lot. You have a wealth of knowledge. In fact, you have shared with us, and we really, really appreciate. Yeah.
Thank you.
And right now, after this very auspicious sharing, interactive sharing with Dr. Wangari, we want to go to the Q&A session. I've seen there are a number of questions, Dr. Wangari, here that you need to attend to. And if you allow me, I would like to go direct to the questions, and then maybe you tell me how you want me to read them, all of them together or bit by bit, you let me know.
Maybe you can read, because we have 40 minutes, maybe you can read them in themes. If they are connected to each other, I can answer a few at a time, if they are related. No problem.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'll go down, I'll be picking the questions, and then in case there's any comment or any opinion or an addition that has been brought about, then I'll also share that, I'll also read that. Let me see. Okay, George Omondi, that one we had attended. He had said he couldn't see the interpreter, but that was okay. Let's see. Okay, I am Costa Jerangat. Okay, you can call me Costa. I hope one day I will visit Costa Rica. Okay, I'm a research assistant in Research Plus Africa, and I'm still a student, not yet worked the deaf mental health. I would like to understand how to handle deaf. I have no experience. I think that's the first question. Then there is Rose Karaoke. I'm a retired civil servant, a mother of an adult hearing impaired son, a counselor with basic sign language, currently researching on stress HI parents undergoing caregiving. Interested in mental health issues for deaf children. That's just a comment. It's not a question, it's just a comment. Maybe Yeah, you can add something to it. Another question. Hello, I am Deuri Wangeshi. You can call me Keshi. I just was started a counselor's class, and I've worked with many deaf persons maybe, but I would like to love to know how they think or handle issues rising in life and how well we can help them in battling daily life struggles. I don't know, Dr. Angaro, whether you'll be able to tell us how they think, and it's your area, you
Yes.
tell us more about that. Let me just
Yes.
go to the third one, and then I give you a space to answer. Just the third one. Okay. What's the cost of learning the sign language with you? Maybe first I stop there, attend to that, and then I'll go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Let me answer those. Thank you for those questions, everybody. So let me start with the first one who asked, they would like to know how to handle deaf people. That's a really good question. So I had started by asking your experiences with deaf people. It is very important that you immerse yourself in the culture. So I happened to learn sign language first on the streets with my friends who are deaf and my colleagues before I went to college. Now, for many of you, this may not be the case. You may want to enroll in a sign language training, like at Kenya National Association of the Deaf, like I said earlier, or you may also want to start congregating with the deaf in their church service in order for you to follow. Take the challenge of, attending a church service if you're a Christian with deaf colleagues and see how you follow the Bible scripture, the preaching, the singing, and you will have a lot of fun. Gladly, the deaf community is very friendly and very welcoming, and you will have an amazing time just patiently learning the deaf communication norms, and you'll be able to improve through your interaction with deaf people. So in terms of I think it was Rose who said that she's working with parents who have deaf children and the stress they experience. That's a really amazing study, Rose. I feel like we need many more such studies. One of the main interventions for parents of children with hearing disability is that if they can just master deaf culture and sign language, it makes for a better time with their children. The other thing with those parents is they need to overcome, especially a lot of the cultural stigma that is labeling deaf people as maybe a curse, or, maybe there was some scene that happened in the family that resulted to deafness and things like that. And so for parents, we try to strengthen their schemas or their understanding about the cause of disability or the cause of deafness, as well as empowering them. Lastly, with parents, we also work a lot with socioeconomic empowerment. We know that especially if we can educate the mothers and give parents of deaf children a place to earn a living, then they will be able to serve their children much better, because it is expensive and there are so many different choices that these people have to make all the time. So that's a really, really good point there. Then about how deaf people think, how they handle issues, and what kinds of things they have to battle. That's a really good question there. We have received a lot of questions from our participants in the deaf mental health program about, are deaf people always angry? And it reminds me of the story of Floyd and the late Floyd, when the police officer had put his big shoe on the neck of Floyd. And now there was a movement across America about get off my neck. So imagine if in your entire life you have experienced oppression and stigma and discrimination, why wouldn't anybody be angry? So we need to start externalizing a lot of these things. And instead of saying deaf people are always angry, we need to look at what is making deaf people angry. And we need to remove those barriers from society that would have deaf people so frustrated that they choose not to even interact or engage or join meetings where, there are no deaf accommodations. So I hope I have managed to answer that. And just to add, in the different life areas, we look at work, and we have managed to do a lot of mainstreaming in the workplaces, starting with sensitizing HR managers as well as CEOs on the importance of introducing the tax rebate, to those who have deafness and disabilities, in order for them to enjoy salaries without paying tax. The other thing we've managed to do in the workplace is policies. And the policy shouldn't just sit in the desk. What we also do after creating policy is we train workplaces on how to make the policy come alive, how to enforce infractions on the policy. Those who are breaking the policy, those rules have to be enforced, and so that we can have equality in the workplace. We've had many, many situations where deaf people are hired. Maybe they're made to even work overtime, but they are paid very little. Sometimes they're not paid, and sometimes they're put on casual labor without ever being promoted. So we've been advocating a lot in the workplace. The other life area is home management. And this is a very significant area for deaf people where they struggle because even when they become adults, a lot of their families do not believe that they can start their own families or have children. They think because they have this disability, then they are not able to even be parents. And that's a big, big, big challenge that we've been able to advocate against using our sexual and reproductive health programs. We've managed to, convince hearing parents to allow their children, when they come of age, to marry and get their own families, and without being intruded so much by, the hearing people. And of course, the other area is relationships and family. So in that life area, the biggest struggle is not being able to participate in family meetings. Can you imagine over the long holidays, like in December, a deaf person is trying to have, a conversation with maybe their uncle or their auntie, and they're not able to communicate because there has not been any change or adaptation. And it is expensive to hire sign language interpreters. It is very unlikely that a deaf person will always be able to pay to have their own communication support. And then lastly, in the area of leisure, we talk about private leisure and social leisure. So private leisure is like personal enjoyment, being able to afford going on vacations and holidays. A lot of deaf people struggle even just to put food on the table. So without even basic needs, it's very difficult for them to enjoy private leisure adequately. And then for social leisure, we still don't have enough. Even in Nairobi, even in Kenya, we still don't have enough positive leisure spaces and activities for deaf and hearing people to congregate and enjoy. If you go to any event website nowadays, events are put online. You will not see many events, where people are being encouraged to just hang out and socialize. So we've been able to create a lot of that space in partnership with other programs that are doing that. There's a very lively deaf culture, like I said, in Nairobi, but deaf culture seems to be more concentrated in the cities than in the villages. So you'll find a lot of deaf people, for instance, congregating around the capital city or the big towns, and they know where all the organizations are. So I hope I've been able to answer you about how the deaf people navigate the different life areas.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Wangari, for that comprehensive response for the questions. And there are still more here. I want to read the few remaining. There are not many. Faraja wants to know, what's the difference between deaf and the hard of hearing terms? What's the difference between deaf and hard of hearing terms? And what is the right way to use them? And then there is Mercy's, there is Renda. What is psychotic disorder and what are the symptoms? Then we have another question here. I would like to read all and then I give you the chance to respond to them. Rose Kariuki is asking, what is the venue for the consultation, clinical supervision, Is it
Okay.
physical? Is it virtual? I think is what we've been talking about. So
Yes.
how do they reach you? How do they get it? That's what Rose Kariuki wants to know. Then we
Okay.
have Mercy Langas who is saying, I am studying KSL, that is Kenya's Sign Language, currently, and have noticed that there are variations in sign language, and currently there is a change in the curriculum. My question is, can it lead to misunderstandings between the deaf and the hearing? And then lastly, let me just finish them. There are only two remaining. I've worked with the deaf boys in West Pokot 14 years ago. They went to Mumwas, their school, though I have left long time ago, and I'm not sure in what state they are now. How can we connect these groups who are in interior places like West Pokot to any possibilities such as online training and so on? That is Renda asking. And lastly, we have, at what age should children start going to ENT checkups? Because I know a child whose earwax basically made her partially deaf. That's a question from Moses Kokach. And then Peter is raising his hand. So first attend to that, and then we go to Peter. Karibu.
Thank you so much. Those are amazing questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's true.
So I'd like to start with the first one that I remember. So the difference between deaf and hard of hearing, and which is a good word to use. That's a very good question. We do have etiquette terminology. Like I said, both of those are positive words. Deaf usually refers to the hearing loss that is so severe that there is very little or no functional hearing. And we do talk about the better ear. Sometimes you can have deafness in one ear or both ears, okay? And when we say deaf with a capital D, like I said, we are talking about the culture. When we use deaf with a small d, we are talking about the medical hearing loss of severe or no hearing. But when we talk about hard of hearing, this is a hearing loss where there may be enough residual hearing such that an auditory device like a hearing aid, FM system, a cochlear implant can provide adequate assistance to process speech. So you've seen people wearing a hearing aid, and most of the time, you know, these are people who are hard of hearing. They can hear a little, they may not be able to hear to a very high degree. So they might be able to detect a loud noise like of a vehicle passing, but may also struggle with speech. Remember, we do have some people who are deaf and have speech. We also have some people who are hard of hearing and have speech. So some people assume just because someone is deaf and hard of hearing, they may not have speech. But this is also very varying amongst people. Then another question on what is psychotic disorders. So psychotic disorders refer to a group of mental health conditions that have to do with the aspects of such as illnesses such as schizophrenia. So for example, we have symptoms like delusions and hallucinations. So these are serious illnesses that affect the mind. They make it hard for someone to think clearly. So if someone is hearing things other people are not hearing, or seeing things other people are not seeing, then we say they may be having hallucinations. Delusions and hallucinations are the main symptoms of psychotic disorder. Delusions are false beliefs, okay? So maybe if you believe something that's actually not true. So we do have different examples of psychotic disorders. I just mentioned schizophrenia, but we have many others. We can talk about schizoaffective and a whole bunch of others. And that is actually in the field of clinical psychology. And I was talking about languishing, which is part of, you know, positive psychology. And so we do have in our program a lot of what the lay person call madness, okay? But in the real sense, that's not a good word to use. So psychosis is what in the streets people will say this person is mad, okay? So they're having a thought disorder, they're not able to think clearly. I hope I've answered you. So there's a question on the logistics of our training, the venues, and my contact. I will be sharing my contact. I'd already given you my website is wangari.africa. So if you would like to contact me, just go to www.wangari.africa. I'll also share my number later. But on the venues, we do have online and on-site at your best preferred venue. So if you call us to where you are, we will be able to organize the logistics, and after you tell us the number of people, we'll be able to facilitate training at your venue. If you're in Kenya, if you're in abroad, just let's talk and we'll be able to plan that. My office is in Nairobi, and I am very available to do more of these partnerships with those who would like to work with deaf and hard of hearing people. So there was also a question on the curriculum changes. Yes, Kenyan Sign Language, just like any other language, is very highly dynamic. It keeps changing, it keeps improving. Now we have a whole bunch of new words because of technology. For instance, words like computer, which were not there like some years ago, okay? We have new words such as Wi-Fi, we have a lot of words that have come because even in spoken language keeps changing. So it's the same with sign language. Therefore, the question is about a concern on whether curriculum changes in the language will affect interaction with the deaf people. Let me say it this way. If you keep in contact with deaf people and keep updating, keep an open posture, like we said at the beginning, if you always are open to learning, you will always learn new vocabulary. So that's not a very major issue. The basic vocabulary, the alphabet remains the same, and we do have all the letters, and therefore you can spell any new word in case you come across a new word and you don't know how to sign it. And usually, deaf people are very creative. Do you know they meet on the streets of Nairobi and any other country, and they agree on a sign, and then they go and take it to the sign language institute at University of Nairobi, where we have the largest repository of their vocabularies. And that's exactly how a new word is created in sign language. Deaf people themselves agree. And if you met a deaf person and you're a hearing person, they will also give you a name. They will give you a sign name that represents your name. And so you're going to have a new name in sign language. So never be afraid about keeping on increasing your vocabulary in the language. So on the last question that came about West Pokot, under the Kenya National Association of the Deaf, we do have a very elaborate county system, and I will be talking with the chair after this. So feel free to connect with me on how we can better reach those deaf people who are in more remote places, who are maybe not able to access a lot of the well-being, positive psychology, such as, in West Pokot. We will be able to connect them with the nearest regional branch, because we do have representation all across Kenya under the Kenya National Association of the Deaf. So for the one who is asking to connect with those in West Pokot, maybe you can just take the effort to write down their names, and maybe if you have their contacts, it will be easier for us to be able to reach them. We do want more of these programs in every corner, actually. And a good question to ask when you go to a new place is, where are deaf people meeting? Whenever I visit a new country, I do that. I've been to Ghana. I met the Ghanaian deaf community. I went to South Korea. I met the South Korean, and we were able to speak to each other fluently, although our sign languages are different. But remember, it's a very visual language. I want you to picture this. If you are at the top of the building and somebody was at the bottom, and the person at the bottom forgot their keys, how would you indicate to them at the top of the building and you're at the bottom of the building, and you can't shout because the building is very tall? How would you tell the person while you're down there that they should throw the keys to you so that you can open the door? Just think about that. So that's exactly how we do it. And whenever I've traveled, I mean, in Ghana, in Somalia, I found a very great deaf community. I've traveled to South Korea, I've said that. The US, a very big deaf community there, and many other countries. You can go to a new country, like in South Korea, I was not able to read any of the signs because their signboards in South Korea are written in Korean, and I cannot read Korean, but I never got lost. I just located the deaf community. They explained everything. I was able to go in a country where I cannot read road signs because of the deaf people, because as I told you, they're highly visual and they're always very friendly. And we took lots of pictures but because nobody gave me permission to share today, I did not share any pictures. So just to encourage you, if you go to a new place, just ask where the deaf people are and start congregating with them. You'll always learn something new. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Do
you,
you have
thank
any
you.
other question? Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Agale. Time is running short. I hope Renda will give us the contact so that she can connect with you. And two last questions together with Peter, who has really raised, he's really want to know something. At what age should children start going to ENT checkups? Because I know a child whose earwax basically made her partially deaf, I read that. And then do we currently have speech therapy services for early childhood education in any of our public primary schools and public health facilities in Nairobi? The other one is congratulations, and towards the end there is, can age, drugs, infection, etc. cause loss of hearing? So answer the three and then we get to Peter. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. So on the question of at what age, it is all ages from infancy to adolescence and to adulthood. So some of the most common problems in ear health is chronic ear infections. Those are things that need to go to the ENT, the ear, nose, and throat doctor. If you always have sinuses or sore throats or running nose, it's always good for an ENT to check the ear. Or if you've noticed that a child is straining, not able to, breathe properly or communicate, or even those who snore excessively, because all these things are connected. And but the most, the recurrent inner ear infection is the condition that's most prevalent that would be a risk for hearing, especially because hearing loss will delay the speech. So speech is delayed because of hearing loss. And so it's easy for the doctor to determine, is this nerve related or is it something with the structure of the ear, in order just to use hearing aids. If it is a nerve related hearing loss, it might be more permanent. So if any of your children are having noisy breathing, or they can't keep the throat away, strep throat away, it's always good to see the ENT. But there's also another condition called tinnitus. It's also good to check, if someone has tinnitus. So we do have a lot of reasons for deafness. Age is one of them. We have age-related hearing loss, especially for older people. We also have a number of drugs, which, for example, the malaria medication, if you get overdosed with, it's easy for you to become deaf. And then a host of infections that can lead to deafness. And these are very good questions because it's about prevention, so that we can be able to know, how to best, prevent ourselves from deafness. And I think the biggest threat for especially the younger generation is all these earphones with loud music that we hear. We go to a lot of loud clubs. And so it's very easy for someone to become deaf because of the loud music constantly being bombarded in the ear. Now, on the question about whether we have speech therapy, yes, we do have a very, very large speech therapy community. As a matter of fact, we do even have an association. We work with partners. One of the partners we work with for hearing loss and speech therapy is called EarTrek. You can check them out. They're doing amazing work, intervening from when children are very young with their speech, in order for those who are hard of hearing and would benefit from speech therapy, therefore get that. So I believe I have answered all the questions. Let me know if there's any other that I have forgotten.
I answered all the questions, yeah. But there are two people who are raising their hands, so
yes, let us have. It's good to hear voices and see hands.
Yeah, in fact, yeah. Let's give this chance to Peter. Peter, yeah, unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you. Please, I just want to ask, what is the connection? Maybe I don't know whether it is from our culture, the connection between when someone put paper in mouth for a deaf person.
Your voice is breaking, Peter. Your voice is breaking.
No, his voice is okay. I think it could be your side, Sister Pauline. His voice is okay. I had the question. So,
Okay,
Peter, you're
okay.
asking what is the connection when somebody puts paper in mouth? Could you give me more context? Yeah.
Because when the paper is in mouth, from our culture, we are told that the blind person and the deaf person will be very hungry. And one person narrated a story to me, so that's why I want to know whether it is culturally bound or something that is intrinsic to intrinsic or the nature of the those who are deaf. So I want to know whether it is from our culture or
So I'm not very familiar about that, actually, the paper in the mouth. I'm not familiar about what that's about.
paper or leaf. If you put paper or leaf in the mouth, that
Mm.
it gets them, it gets the person that is deaf hungry, and the person can even kill.
Oh my, it sounds very much like a myth. I'm not sure if any human being with a paper in the mouth will get hungrier. So I don't know what that's about. It sounds culturally bound, but there are lots of myths and misconceptions. What families do when they are struggling with their children, for instance, and they can't communicate, and maybe they have not been patient enough to just learn how to communicate with their children. They may come up with different styles of,
Okay.
replacing the focus, but I don't think we need anybody with any paper in the mouth in order for them to be hungry. What I know is that families can use a paper and a pen to communicate, for those who don't understand sign language, and they can also improve their attitude because, it feels awkward at first to have a child, and a lot of parents are very embarrassed. And in the family setup, we can still take the time to accommodate deaf children, deaf members, even if we are watching TV, they are seeing the pictures, but they can't hear the words. There's so many ways we can bridge the communication so that, we are able to be in the presence of deaf people in a respectful way. So I think interactional myths and misconceptions need to be busted so that we can also look for more respectful ways to interact with the deaf. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Doctor. I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much for that. There is Regina also. Regina, unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I came late because I couldn't start the meeting from my phone, and I appreciate the little that I have gotten. I hope somebody will share with me the recording so that I can harness what I have missed. I can make the best of it. But I got a comment from a doctor when she was answering the causes of deafness and all that. And she said malarial drugs and malarial drugs.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think it is not all of them.
Yeah.
Specifically, it is anything with quinine.
Quinine, yes.
Quinine, because I suffered the same myself. I almost lost my hearing completely. One ear was remaining only 30%. What happens? It is blocks the blood flow in the ears.
Yes.
And that way you get, to lose it slowly by slowly.
Yes.
By the time I was aware I'm losing this, I was actually falling down. I wake up and I lose balance and I fall. So I just wanted to make it clear, it is quinine and everything with quinine extract. If you overdose, you do overdose, then it can, it may not be overdose, but overuse. Because, for example, if you are treated with it this time, next time you get malaria, you are treated with it again and again, then at the end of the day, it can affect your hearing ability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that input, and it is true. Quinine, chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, all of these drugs and some others are known to cause temporary hearing loss. And tinnitus. Tinnitus is what you were saying, feeling disoriented, feeling like falling. That's what we call tinnitus. And usually it's after long-term treatment. And unfortunately, some people have even died out of this overdose. So that's a very good input, and I appreciate that clarification. That's the older generation of the malaria medication. Good. Back to
Okay.
you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wangari. Thank you so much. You've really answered those questions quite comprehensively, and I'm sure most of us have really got what they really wanted to know. From the now chat box, what I see is communications. People really have appreciated your conversation, your sharing. They have really accolades flow. And also they have given their contacts. I'm sure we shall pick these. You've been invited to Kitale Diocese for the same. You've been invited to West Pokot, to Rwanda, to all over. And this tells you how it has been. It's quite wonderful. Since time is really not on our side, I would wish to take this chance, Wangari and also Julia, our Kenya Sign Language interpreter. I would like to give this chance to you, maybe to give a final remark to the audience. Meanwhile, I would request Naomi to display or to share our calendar events of the park. And so that people, if they've really enjoyed this talk, they can also join us in many other talks that comes every other month. So Naomi, kindly share the screen as Dr. Wangari gives her final remarks, and maybe she tells us where we can meet her in case we need to see her. Dr. Wangari, over to you, the final remark.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I would like to welcome all of us to consider a more deaf-friendly world. Let us all create workability around deaf inclusion. I would like to also invite you to consider joining the Deaf Mental Health Program so that we can do more positive psychology interventions. And our association is very vibrant. It provides us the vehicle in order to do this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wangari. Thank you. It was so wonderful, awesome. And in fact, you can see from the people's chat, we've really enjoyed, and we look forward to having you again. In front of us, you can see the calendar of events of PAC. I've said this sharing has been brought to us through the Positive Psychology Association of Kenya. So Wangari is really putting it again and again. And you can see ahead of us, we have the webinars, we have the training. We have, like now, you have a forthcoming training that will be in the month of May, character coaches training. This is a training that we offer people who want to train about character or character formation to young people in the churches, in schools, high schools, primary schools. And so we offer training for 2-3 days. And from there, we keep on following you where you are and what you're doing. It's something that has already been approved. It's a training that has already been approved, and many people are embracing it. So we are welcoming you too to join us. And apart from even this training, we also have webinars that come every other month. And they are free webinars. We have other trainings that come and which are quite affordable. And in case you want to reach us, you will display, I think Naomi had already displayed our contact. If you want to reach us, if you want to register with us, you are really welcome. And now, without much ado, I want to bring it to the end. And not unless there is a very burning question that one would like to ask. I can see still messages coming in. And let me see, Dr. Wangari, whether there's a burning question that really you need to react upon, because you still have a few minutes remaining. Let me see whether there's a question. How can one get notifications for the upcoming sessions? What you need, just give us your address, your contact. We shall reach out to you. Everything else that is following here, Dr. Wangari, how does hearing affect speech? Maybe that one you can attend to it as the last one. But everything else that is on the chat box, people appreciate so much. Asante sana, you have appreciated. There's a lot you have learned today, and I think also the contacts. So we are very grateful. Maybe just for 1 minute, you can attend to this question. How does hearing affect speech?
Yes, so people with a hearing loss may not hear their own voice when they speak. So they may speak too loudly or not loudly enough, okay, the volume. The other thing is they may have a speaking pitch. The pitch may be too high, like a soprano, or they may sound like they're mumbling. And that's also a result of like, the rate of speaking, the inflection, because they don't have the everyday experience of being in a hearing world. One of the experiments we do when we are ice breaking the first day in our physical trainings is that we give people earplugs and tell them for the entire day they will walk around Nairobi without hearing. That's an experiment I'd like you to try. How would it be like for you to cross the road without hearing a single sound? You will come to realize you have depended on your hearing a lot. People who are deaf depend a lot on their eyesight. And so we do have many groups. We even have a group of people who are both deaf and blind. Now, these people depend a lot on the touch, on tactile, So hearing loss affects speech perception, and there's no access to speech because if you cannot hear yourself speaking your own voice, therefore you have a difficulty reduction in speech comprehension. This has nothing to do with their intelligence, their level of social interaction. A lot of people think because we are in a very oral culture, we like speaking all the time, we think that because somebody is deaf, they are probably stupid, but that's not true. What we know is that because of the loss of hearing, it has a ripple effect on their ability to communicate, but it does not affect intelligence. So they are still interested in conversations. However, they have compensatory strategies in the world. For example, if you're walking on the streets of Nairobi and behind you there is a boda boda, motorbike, what do? You'll probably hear the hooting and you'll move. What do you think a deaf person does when they are walking in the streets of Nairobi and there are always all these motorcycles hooting behind them? They will always be scanning their environment using their eyes. And so their eyes become their ears. And that's why, that experiment with the earplugs enables hearing people to have a sense of the world when you do not have sound. But thank you so much for that question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wangari. Thank you so much. I think you cannot give us enough. You have a lot that you can share with us, and we are so grateful. I think I can, okay, Vivian has something to share with us. We still have a minute left. Vivian, over to you.
Hello, Sister Pauline, Dr. Wangari, and our sign language interpreter. That was so excellent. That was so engrossing. That was so engaging. In fact, as we disconnect just now, I want to go back to the Facebook page and just listen to it again, because I think I've learned a lot. And yeah, it has even given us, I now know things that I didn't know about the deaf community, and at least there's some sensitization around it. Thank you very, very much. That was good. That was 10 over 10. Now, my concern was, I was busy looking at the sign language interpreter, and I was trying to see how fast she's able to translate, because I found Dr. Wangari, there are moments when you went too fast, and I was wondering whether she's able to, keep up with you in terms of speed, but I found it very excellent. I don't know how to read sign language, but I could tell she's so on point with, your speed. So how is that managed? Like how is the speed or the tonnage of talking managed in sign language? Like,
I think because we have the interpreter consultant expert in the room, I'd ask her to voice and tell us. I can sign for her. So if you don't mind, Julia, you can answer that. You can just unmute your microphone. I'll sign for you because you're our sign language expert.
Oh, hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Julia Washira. I'm an interpreter. So to answer Vivian's question, I think it requires a lot of concentration while at it. And maybe over time, you're able to catch up with the pace of the one speaking. And somehow your mind is able to, the brain is able to process quickly whatever is being said for you to sign it and also still and also try and make sure that it's not anything. So maybe I think it's a skill we acquire and a lot of practice with the deaf people, because when the deaf people talk equally, or rather they sign equally fast as they communicate. So I'd say it's maybe a combination of time and experience. Thank you.
Yeah, to add to what Julia has said, there is simultaneous interpretation, and you can see Julia is very fluent. She is a trained, a certified, a qualified sign language interpreter. Remember that the speed of light is faster than the speed of sound. So light travels faster than sound, and a visual language will be much faster. I gave you the example of next time when you are at the top of the building, try to communicate with somebody at the bottom. You'll find that it's just easier to use sign language. Or if you are swimming, those of you who love swimming, and you want to give stories under the water, deaf people do that all the time. And you can use sign language in the water, it will be much easier. So that is usually a very common question that just shows the interest of hearing people in learning sign language. Thank you, and over back to you, Sister Pauline.
Sister Pauline, just one more. Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. Now, I've seen on the chat box so many email addresses or phone numbers, and I was just thinking, isn't it easier for them to pick the Positive Psychology Association email address? I think Naomi has posted it on the chat along with the website details, so that they can be able to send their email directly to the Positive Psychology Association email. Like, it's easier rather than posting it in the chat. If they could kindly pick our email address and send their contacts onto our email address, because the chat stays in the chat. So I think if they can, it's been posted on the chat box, the email address. Thank you. Thank you very much, sister.
Okay, thank you so much, Vivian. Thank you for your intervention. Thank you. Of course, there is the email. There we have the email for the positive psychologist, so we can email there so that you're able to pick your contacts, and from there, henceforth, we'll be able to communicate to you anytime that you have a communication, anytime you have a webinar. So we are so grateful. Thank you all. Particularly want to be very, very grateful to Julia Wachila. You have helped all people to be on the same platform. You are awesome. It's great. It's quite great. And I was so kind, like, how are you making it? I'm so happy. Thank you so much. We are grateful. Thank you, Dr. Wangari, for making this great. It has been quite auspicious for us. And you have given us a wealth of knowledge, especially in this for the deaf community. I've done a bit of KSL. I also work with children and learners who are mentally challenged, and I can resonate with you as you talk about people who are here and hearing. I can resonate with you. And it's caused us to be more empathetic, to be more understanding to these people, because they are part of our culture, they are part of our society, they are part of our family members. So we look forward to having you again, Dr. Wangari, as well as Julian, and there are always opportunities for us to learn. So for all the participants, for the audience of this evening, we are very, very grateful. Once again, you are saying, if you want, this was just a taste, just a slight taste of what we do in the Positive Psychology Association. If you want more and more, join us, get our contact, and then you'll be getting again and again and more of these occasions every now and then. To Naomi, who has also been with us, who has done the IT work, thank you so much. Thank you for your availability. We appreciate you so much. And so without much ado, I would like to add this. I'd like to add this webinar. They can see some that has been here. No, just for those who wanted to see our email address, there they are. So you can easily reach us through that email address. Thank you so much, Naomi. So thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome again. And we look forward to having you for our coach training, character coach training next month. You've seen the dates, and even for our webinar that will be in the month of June, the 4th Wednesday in the month of June, every 4th Wednesday after every 1 month. So it counts. So we don't have it in the month of May, but we shall be having it in the month of June. So welcome. It's a free webinar, and it's an opportunity for learning. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. May God bless you. Thank you, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for the wonderful moderating.
Okay, yes, sister, thank you for the excellent moderation. You guys are just beyond good.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So you're free to leave. You're free to leave at your own leisure. You're free to leave. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated.
Oh, great, 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 great.
Let's keep in touch.
Yeah. Also that one, yeah, it's great, yeah. And a lot of interactions with the people. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Right.
Wangari, and everyone else. Bye. That was
Thanks,
awesome.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you. See you again.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's
Thank you.
keep in touch.
You appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Naomi, you can end the call now after you collect all the contacts that are coming in.
Yeah.
All right.
There are many, yeah.